So, we're here to talk about Dead Island 2 at Gamescom. I was wondering, to kind of start at the start from you guys' perspective, when did you kind of get involved with Dead Island as a franchise, and kind of what was your kind of first kind of thoughts on how to kind of run with it?
Yeah, so we got the opportunity to work on Dead Island 2 in 2018. It was a golden opportunity for us, really, because we were all fans of the original game. We really wanted to push the boundaries with Dead Island 2 of visceral combat, which is one of our main gameplay pillars, and also the pulp tone. We wanted to really drive a really exciting and interesting and vibrant pulp tone for Dead Island 2. So, as I said, it's really a golden opportunity for us, and we're kind of it's so nice being able to finally deliver the game to the fans that they've been waiting for all this time.
Yeah, it makes you feel a bit like a fairy godmother. Your wish is granted. You get Dead Island.
When you come into kind of a pre-existing franchise like this, I imagine you'll think about which things you want to keep, which things you want to evolve. What were some of the things kind of on both of those lists for you guys coming in?
I would say that the tone was an interesting sort of decision that we had to come to, and that we focused on somewhat strongly, because the original game, what we loved was the over-the-top nature of the combat. And to find a tone to match that, we went to pulp as an inspiration. So we're talking the sort of splattergore movies of the 80s, but also like Predator, RoboCop, that kind of jam. But then, the pulp magazines of the 20s, 30s, 40s. And what was good about those were the over-the-top, but also kind of aspirational, unrepentant characters. They weren't over the top because they were slapstick. They were over the top because they believed in themselves, and they were larger than life in every way. And the situations are larger than life. So we've gone very like rule of cool. If it maybe doesn't make perfect sense in the real world, but it would be really cool, we're kind of going with it in terms of dialogue, in terms of narrative and situations and things like that.
In terms of like the weaponry as well, I would say, like when I was playing the demo the other day, it took me a little while to realise all the different things that were already kind of on the weapon wheel. Have you got any like particular favourites? I was really into like the electric claw thing.
Really, the big thing with our weapons is we've got such a vast range of weaponry. As you experienced a small slice of it in the demo, but the key feature of our weapons really is that it is so customisable to the fight that you're going to partake in. So we're very much about up close and personal zombie slaying. We exist within a really bloody and chaotic combat sandbox, where there's all kinds of different elemental elements in there as well, like fuel to take advantage of and water to take advantage of. So with regards to your weapons, you can mod those weapons so that they can have sort of electrical elements to them, and fire and caustic acid, so you can melt zombies. It's very much about customising your weapons to suit your own play style and to suit the encounter. And I personally really like the big two-handed sweeping chopping weapons, and if you combine that with, say, a caustic mod, you can melt the zombie at the same time as bisecting the zombie, which is a lot of fun.
I'm a katana girl myself, but I do love those claws. They're really fun.
And would you have any like particular tips for people who are jumping in terms of the combat? I think I died a lot of times on my first kind of attempt. Is there any kind of is there like a certain groove that you have to get into with it, do you think?
Actually, I'd say one of the fun things, so admittedly, you guys got to play a demo that's quite a ways into the game. People playing the game for the first time will get to know each of these, types of skills, types of weapons, types of moves one at a time, and get good at and get used to each one as they go. We kind of threw you into the deep end. But I would say one of the things I like best actually is that there is not a correct way, an obvious way, the right way. The metagame says I have to have this loadout of skills, I have to use this weapon because it's overpowered, whatever it is, to play the game. And in fact, if you try to play it with exactly the same thing, throughout the game because it's the right one, you wouldn't succeed. You have a wonderful fire two-handed sledgehammer, and then you run into a firefighter zombie and he shrugs off your fire damage, so you gotta switch weapons, you gotta switch skills. I would say that we've given players a combat toy box, so just kind of go nuts, find out what you like to do and get good at that, and experiment with ways that you can turn zombies against each other as well. Lots of fun.
As you touched on, there are lots of different possible techniques. So, if you're struggling, you can kick zombies to knock them back. We've got curveballs, which are these kind of utility items that can add interesting dynamics to fights, like throwing Molotov cocktails or throwing timed meat bombs, so the zombies all grab it. That'll buy you a precious few seconds while the zombies sort of move away and start eating all the flesh, and then there'll be a huge explosion. We've got ability skill cards that you can customize, so depending on which ones of those players choose, you could be the sort of character that might dodge out of the way of zombie attacks, or you might be more of a tank type character class where you can block and soak up damage to regain stamina. So yeah, there are so many different possibilities and different techniques that you could use.
Yeah, the advice is, if you're in trouble, try something new.
Yeah.
And am I right in saying there are 6 different kind of playable characters? Does that kind of, depending on which one you choose, will have impacts on kind of the way that you play as well?
So the biggest difference, honestly, in the way they play, I think, is that they all have unique voiceover, and that they they react to situations differently, and they're kind of fun to play and replay that way. But yeah, each character is very slightly better at a thing than the other characters. We do give you an indication of that when you're choosing your character, so you're not sort of going in totally blind. But and some of them, all of them have 1 or 2 or 3 skill cards that are only for that character or only for these 2 characters or something. So if you want to, you can really focus on, like, I like to play this character as the slightly speedier version or the slightly tankier version. But the nice thing is, if you don't want to do that, you can equip the slightly speedier person with a giant 2-handed sledgehammer and make her block and instead of dodge and all of that. Like, it's really up to you.
One of the big contributing factors, really, in terms of how those 6 different characters play is the skill deck system, because the cool thing about the skill deck system is it's customizable at any time through the entire game. So over the course of the game, you'll acquire a really wide variety of skill cards, and it's really about changing those on the fly to change your own playstyle. And as Con said, what works well in one combat encounter at one part in the game, you might feel like you want to change that out a bit later on. So ultimately, most of those 6 characters, most of those skills, the vast majority will be available across all of them. But the other cool thing about the 6 characters is the different personality types, right?
Yeah, they're all completely larger than life. They were all just a lot of fun to write, and they were all written by different people, so it's not one person trying to do 6 voices. It's it's very, very much different voices for them.
And what can you say about the world? Obviously, we know that it's based on an LA kind of setting, but what can you kind of say about kind of the state of the world at this kind of point in the story, and the size of the world and stuff like that?
So some people have asked us, well, it's set in Los Angeles, why Dead Island, besides the fact that it's a franchise? But the island here is kind of a man-made quarantine of, it's made an island of Los Angeles. And LA is, first of all, like, just location-wise, it's a gorgeous setting. It's sort of paradise in terms of sun, sea, and sand and everything, but it's also a paradise in terms of, like, aspiration. People want to make it in LA. Hollywood has gotten very good at exporting the idea of Hollywood over the last century, so we all kind of know what it should look like. And people want to be a rock star in LA, an A-list movie actor in LA, so it's fun to have that location and then make a real mess of it. That's definitely part of it. And this idea of paradise gone to hell is a sort of a franchise idea. The original was a resort luxury island, fictional, but we thought we'd set it in a real place. It's not like a 1-to-1 or anything. You're not going to be able to, like, navigate LA if you play our game, but we've worked hard to distill the essence of some of the iconic locations around Los Angeles and put them in our game.
And how kind of, it's been must be over 10 years now since the first Dead Island. How do you think, advancements in tech and things have changed, like the size of kind of open world environments that we can do now, and like the fidelity that you can get and stuff like that?
We had that laser focus for Dead Island 2 on being absolutely best in class, first person, up close and personal combat. And so to that extent, we developed our own unique bespoke tech, which we called our Flesh system. That stands for the fully locational evisceration system for humanoids. And what that allows us to do is we really model the zombies from the inside out, so they've got all of their internal organs, the skeleton, all of the layers of sort of muscle and skin, and then the clothing on top. This is all in the name of fully procedural dismemberment, which is not just amazing from a sort of a tech and a visual point of view, but it also ties into the combat tacticality, really pushing the boundaries of that first-person melee combat experience. And it also works really well for ranged weapons too, sort of blasting holes in zombies with shotguns and that kind of thing.
And what has it been like for you guys this week to see people kind of outside the company playing the game for the first time? Is there any kind of things that have surprised you or kind of amused you in seeing people play it?
I think it reiterated, watching people play the demo, just how many different ways people play the game. We all play it differently as devs. There's always one guy who's famous for jump kicking and drop kicking everything in the world, just yeets them off the side of buildings. And then other people, it's all heavy attacks all the time. They like that really thud, build up, hajaba. But I think that's just been reinforced by the demo. And I love that there's two big facial reactions we get. One of which is splat, ooh, ooh, that flesh system is like, it's a really responsive, it is a different look if you hit it here versus here, depending on the weapon you use. And the other one is splat, haha, yeah, that was amazing. And that's been really rewarding, just really rewarding.
I mean, the reaction to the demo, the responses that we've had has been absolutely fantastic. We couldn't have asked for a better response, really, so we're super happy and really proud of the team back in Nottingham.
And obviously people have all sorts of different play styles when it comes to games such as this. Are you starting to estimate roughly how long the game will take for different sorts of players to complete, or is it kind of too soon to tell, do you think?
I mean, we've done extensive play testing of the game just throughout the development, over the past few years anyway. So we've got pretty good ideas, we think, in terms of, sort of shortest amount of time, longest amount of time. I mean, it's really interesting.
We're not confirming the details on it right now.
But I mean, it is interesting within the context of the demo. It's about a 20-minute demo, and some people have wanted or needed to take much longer than that. Some people, get to grips with it fairly quickly. The demo that we're showing is set sort of 2/3 of the way through the game. So obviously, normally in a normal playthrough, you'd have acquired all of these tools and techniques over time and got to grips with them. So we are kind of throwing players into the deep end for the demo, but that's really because we want to show off all of the different possibilities.
Just final thing. Obviously, people have been waiting for a return to this franchise for a long time. We now know it's only a few months away. What would you kind of say to those fans that have been looking forward to it? It's the final stretch. What would kind of be your message?
On the storytelling side of things, I would say that if you are into the lore, if you are into the sort of background and things, you don't have to engage with it, but there are a lot of details in the world that you should look for and that you should sort of have a think about, because we're looking, I'm not spoiling anything, but story-wise, we're looking a little bit more into the nature of the infection, the consequences of that on a personal as well as on a sort of almost species-wide level.
I mean, I think Dead Island 2 will be absolutely recognisable as a Dead Island game, but hopefully, the real evolution of the franchise, the real generational leap and the next step. That pulp tone that we've injected, that vibrant pulp tone, the pulp horror aspects of Dead Island as well, the monstrous encounters and the jump scares, but also all of that effort, all of those years of development into our combat systems and the gore tech. I really think players will appreciate those.
Well, thank you for taking the time. Enjoy the rest of your show, and congrats on the game. Awesome.